for Bible class. We do have some good news about that. We spoke with the Frank Turek and his organization, and they have given us permission to stream these videos every Sunday. And those of you at home are just a part of that extended class because of that. But we do have one problem with that, is that we can't keep it up on the website. Because of copyright laws, we have to take the video down, say on Monday morning. So that will give those, and those of you, if you ever miss a lesson or something, you can watch it at home, but you either need to watch it live or it will only be archived through the end of the day on Sunday, because we can't keep it up on Monday. We want to follow all the copyright laws, not only because it's legal, but because it's right. These people own the material, and as most media has, it has some kind of copyright license or use, legal use that is allowed for that. And we appreciate that very much, and we are glad that they're giving us permission to go ahead and stream it as well. So, where we left off last week, he was at the end of answering some questions after he discussed the topic, does God exist? And I think the last question he had to do, I think the last question that he had was in regard to the age of the earth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let us listen to what he has to say, and then I will get up and we will have a discussion of last week's lesson, including the age of the earth. And then if we have time after that, we will go ahead and begin the third section of the video program. So let's go ahead and see what he has to say about the age of the earth. Okay, what we most of us do not know the assumptions behind science. Okay, all right, that's a good idea. There is one major assumption that all scientists make, and it is the greatest strength of science, and it's the greatest weakness of science. Now, I meant to grab this before I came to the house, but I noticed we have something really nice right here. Now, I'm going to be careful not to tear anything up. All right. Let us imagine that the universe is contained within this box. Everything that was created is in the box. That is the number one major assumption of all scientists, that the universe is a closed system. Now, if it really was a shoebox, I could just take the lid off, but this has a handy little door. I can open and close. But you notice the difference? Closed universe, open universe. Closed universe, open universe. If the universe indeed is closed, that means everything there is about the universe is within the box. All the rules, all the laws, what we call natural law, all of those things, even the he mentioned last week in the lesson, first and second law of thermodynamics and all that. It's inside the box. But Christians believe in an open universe, and that outside of that universe, something else exists. And who do we believe that is? God. God is the one that created the universe. He's the one that created all the laws inside. At any point or time, and this is the difference between a closed and an open universe, God can reach in and He can change things. Is it normal for dead people to rise from the dead? No. That's a scientific law. Things that die stay dead. But what God can do is He can reach inside of that and He can change things. What is the normal length of a 24-hour day? 24 hours. I mean, that's basically set, isn't it? By the rotation of the heavens and the earth, all of those. But God can reach inside of that. Have you ever been watching a program? I'll even say, nowadays with DVDs and other things, you can actually skip ahead to a new chapter. But remember the old VHS tapes? And often in the beginning, they fast forwarded so you didn't have to watch a whole program. But usually it was kind of slow. It almost gave you time to walk in the kitchen and pour you another cup of coffee, or grab the pack of Oreos or whatever you're going to do to go back in and watch it. So a lot of times you would start the fast forward and then you would walk out of the room and then you would come back and you could do whatever you wanted to do. You see, God is able to do that. God is able to, because not only does He exist outside space, He exists outside time. And so time is not a factor for Him. So whenever we talk about days, and let me start here by saying, I believe God could have created the universe any way He wanted to. There is nothing outside the power of God that He could have just snapped His fingers, or in our case, spoke and said, "Let there be," and it simply was, instantaneously. When you come to that, I don't even think it would take a 24-hour day to create what He said. Now, I think He quibbled a little bit when He said about the vegetation to grow. If God could create the vegetation, He could make it grow fast. You know what I'm saying? So God could have done it any way that He wanted to. And that's not going to bother my faith. His bottom line, which was the fact that God created, is the most important thing for us to land on. But if you understand this open and closed universe, that will explain almost all the questions that you have. Science presupposes certain things. I love this. I love this question. It's called the belly button argument. Did Adam and Eve have a belly button? You think about that. The trees that God created, if He did speak them into existence and not just grew them in a rapid fast forward fashion, if He did speak them into being, did the original trees have rings? Well, if He created that tree on what day would that be? My mind's not working. But if He created the trees on that single day, if you were to cut one of those trees and count the rings, how many years would it have told you that tree had been there? All right, so here's the point, what I'm trying to say. It all is answered by the open universe. It's an open universe. God can interact in it in any way that He wants. If He gives a day, that is either for our benefit because we know what a day is, or if He says it's a day, it literally was a 24-hour day. But God is, but God is simply using that to communicate with us. Why did it even mention 7 days or 6 days of creation, and on the seventh day God rested? Well, there was obviously a reason it was revealed to us in that way. Now, we may not know it, but we do know it. Yes, Vic. That's the reason He said, and see, that is the reason He brought that up, because most people that insist on a 6-day creation, most of the reason is because In Hebrew, the most common definition is 24-hour day. And that's what people normally refer to when you do that. And he even said that if you look at science, it would even say that the universe, the earth, and even people have all existed here at different periods of time. And there is no reason why that couldn't be the case, although I don't know what amounts you would put on that. It's just that our view, whatever that view is, has many assumptions. And that's true in the Scripture, that Yom means the same thing in every context. We also assume how Genesis 1 functioned within the not only the early canon, but how it was but how it was communicated, passed down in different ways. So what it was written in a certain way for a certain reason. But our knowledge about that may be based on relative assumptions. Like I said, God could have done it any way they wanted to, and I have no problem with that. I don't feel any great need to make the universe millions or billions of years old and the earth the same. I don't have any real need to justify that scientifically. The closed universe, open and closed universe theory, to me, takes care of that issue. I think human beings have probably been here longer than 6,000 years, in my opinion. And you say, well, what about that? If you count up the genealogies, that's what the earth is, about 6,000 years old. Well, as he mentioned, and I think correctly so, genealogies were not meant to be chronologies. They usually had gaps, and sometimes even big gaps in it. I have no idea how long human beings have been here, and I have no real need to appeal to science for that. Go ahead. I think that's good. Sometimes we do want to put God in that box. Anybody else? Yes, sir, Vic.
Well, part of the 6,000 years was that genealogy, and there are several genealogies in the Bible. A lot of them are different just because of what you said. It depends on the purpose.
Well, that is one of the suppositions that religious people have had. Looking at the early chapters. Basically Genesis 1 to Genesis 11 is what is considered prehistory. It's prehistory. I mean, it's very difficult for you to go to any kind of archaeological record or any kind of historical writing somewhere and find anything about those first 11 chapters of Genesis. Now, whenever you get into Abraham, that's definitely into a period we would think of more like history, because there have been inscriptions of the names of the patriarchs. So that's another way of looking at it. Yes.
I just remember when I first heard that 6,000 years, what that did to me, and I was already a believer. But what that did to me, whoa! I mean, he's coming quick. I mean, this is not a long. This is millions of years here. We're talking now. Mm-hmm. 6,000 is nothing, compared to millions. Just brought it home.
One of the things, and the reason this is an important issue, for me anyway, I don't know about you, it's important for us to at least recognize that there's disagreement on that. But the reason it's an important issue for me is because I don't want to set up a straw man argument and put all my eggs in one basket when it comes to some of these things. We teach our kids. There was some curriculum. Our curriculum back at Southside in Grenada, especially for our children, was not all that great. And especially when you got up to the teen, it was basically somebody who came in and just opened the Bible and there wasn't even rhyme or reason, probably no study, no thought put into it, and would just go to it. So I looked around, and there was something really good around the Brotherhood. It was a rotational kind of curriculum where you would take a Bible lesson, but it would take you actually, the way we did it, it would take you 3 weeks to complete it, because I think there were 6 lessons that went with every Bible lesson. But whoever wrote it definitely took a young earth view, and they put all kind of information in there about, and they were very dogmatic about things that, at least in my opinion, you couldn't be dogmatic about. And so I just don't want to set up a straw man for people, especially when it comes to Christian evidences, and then create something that could very easily perhaps be disputed or disproved in the future. I would rather say this is what I believe about it, or this has this difficulty. By the way, that is the best way to study anything. Study both sides of the issue and realize that it has, and that's one thing about higher education. When you get into the classes that have higher education, it was a situation where they would say, okay, some scholars think this, some scholars think this. This is the pros and cons of each view, and this is how I come down on it. Is usually what it was, and that's good. I think someone else, yes.
What he was saying was the important thing is that God created
Mm-hmm.
the heavens and the earth, and as far as the time period, it's something we shouldn't argue over. It doesn't matter as far as our salvation.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a legitimate discussion, but I don't think we should argue over it. Yeah. Did you? Anyone? Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
The fact that God can make a tree that actually went from a seedling to the size of the tree in like a blink of an eye.
Yes.
Otherwise, you see, he'd have made a chicken gizzard first, and then later on, because how in the world did he do all of this for us to become the things that we did?
Mm-hmm. That's right. And to think about that, that would mean that God isn't being deceptive, but that would mean there is a built-in discrepancy. I mean, how old is that tree? That tree is 1 second old. How old is that tree? That tree is 100 years old, because you can count 100 rings. Immediate discrepancy on how old it is. And that's the open universe. God can, take his fast forward, and he can go to town with it. Do it whatever he wanted. God could have created the universe. He mentions the Big Bang, created everything. It began to spread out just the way it did. And then just say, hey, I'm going to go talk with my angels for a bit. And come back and say, 40 billion years have passed, or whatever it is. That's God. That's his business, and it's not mine. It's way above my pay grade. I can't even create a consistent peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So, anyone else? So again, if we want to come down one way or the other on this, I would say the most important thing is that God did create it. Secondly, any view, whether science or religious, has its own built-in presuppositions. I mean, we presuppose that the genealogies have no gaps, and that's how you can come up with 6,000 years. I mean, and if you do that, if you think that is an actual chronology, then yeah, that's basically what it turns out to be. And there are people that feel very strongly on both sides. So I just want to share that. Okay, anything else in regard to that matter? We've got a few minutes that we can cover some of the questions. Do you remember the 3 kind of worldviews in regard to God he spoke of? Go ahead. Yes. There's theism. There is a God who made everything. Okay? And then there's pantheism, which means that God is in all. God's in the trees. He's in us. He's in everything. And that's like Zen Buddhism and Hinduism have that. And then the third one believes there is no God at all. Remember what that is? Atheism. So I think that's important for us to think of. And he is being very tentative in the beginning of these studies by saying, well, we don't know if it's the God of the Bible or the God of the New Testament. In these early chapters, he's just arguing that it was indeed created. Now, he's going to make an argument for the God of the Bible, the God of the New Testament, as he goes on. Basically, he's building a building, and he's doing it one block at a time. Yes, sir?
And the whole point of the DVD is to save our children from going to college and then thinking they've been lied to all their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then we lose it. So this is trying to prevent that.
I think that's the reason we need to use very sound arguments, too, when we're talking with them about that. Because if the arguments we use are not sound, then they may say, well, look, there are holes all in this argument. And that's the reason we need to be careful how we share it, I believe. The cosmological argument is the first argument that he put forward. Can anyone describe what the cosmological argument is? Well, the reasoning is this way. Everything that had a beginning had a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe had a cause. It's like what your kids used to ask you. Mom and Dad, where did I come from? Well, you're our child. We made you. Well, where did you come from? Well, the same thing with Grandma and Grandpa. You go back a few generations, and you finally land upon Adam and Eve. And you say, well, where did Adam and Eve come from? Well, God created them, spoke them into existence, made them out of dust, took a rib from Adam's side. And then the next question is, well, where did God come from? So immediately you understand, just as human beings, we understand everything has a beginning. It had a place where it started. But you get to a point when you go back that you can't go any farther. If everything had a beginning, you could even go into the atheistic version or the evolutionary version of that, and say, well, it's because of the macroevolution involving various animals. Oh, it's because, one day something crawled up out of the water. It's because one day an amino acid was formed. Well, it's because when the earth was cooling. And then you get all the way back to the beginning of the universe. Well, where did it come from? In our human experience, we know that everything had to have a beginning. And he goes on to talk about the evidence for this, because this is also making some assumptions. But he talks about the evidence, and he uses the word surge. Do you remember what surge stands for? The S stands for the second law of thermodynamics, which basically says that everything is going from a state of order to disorder. Everything is unraveling. He uses the idea of your house. You may paint it, but it's going to need painting again very soon. You can't drive a car forever without it falling apart. You can't even drive a car cross country without it running out of gas. You'll have to stop and add gas. That's the nature of second law of thermodynamics. Well, the idea behind that is if everything is going from order to disorder, and then you project that into infinity, how long do you think you could drive a car without it running out of gas? Well, there's a finite amount of miles, maybe 500, maybe more than that if you have some sort of hybrid. Maybe 500 miles max. You can drive a car without it running out of gas. You project that back to infinity. That car, even if you stopped and filled it up every time it ran out of gas, eventually all the gas would be gone. There would be nothing left. You see? So that's the way energy and matter is. So that's the second law of thermodynamics. U stands for what? Universe is expanding. So if you look at the universe, he mentions the telescopes and things that you see, apparently it began at a point that he conceded probably was what we understand the Big Bang to be. Is whenever God created, at that point everything sprang from that point of existence. And it is still spreading out. Even if it goes back billions of years, if you computed backwards, you would get to a point where there was nothing. You see, everything had to have a beginning. R stands for the radiation afterglow, the removal of heat from the Big Bang explosion. He mentions that indicates that things are running down. It had a beginning, but now it's running down. The great galaxy seeds, actually, I forget the argument that he made about that. This was unique for me in studying him. And then Einstein's theory of general relativity. It requires a finite universe in order for it to exist. And then, let me just mention here, if you're going to buy a book for this study, I recommend the teacher's book, Why I Still Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, that's bought from Frank Turek's organization. I haven't found a reasonable priced copy anywhere else but their organization, and I think they're probably selling it not over cost at their organization. The reason I recommend this one is if you get the student book, it doesn't have answers. And there's no way that you can write the amount of information that he has put in the teacher's book just by listening to the video or participating in our discussion. Now, these books will run us about $20. If you guys, and I've had one person to say they definitely wanted a book, and I'm going to get, if you tell me today, I want a book. Next week, I will have a copy of this lesson. Got Vic. Anyone else want to raise their hand for a book? We've got. All right, so that's 4, 5. All right, because this is good. Now, some of you have gone ahead and bought the book that goes with this. This is good. And as a matter of fact, if you're the kind of person that really likes to dig in, this is the best book to get, because they will tell you a lot more information. And this is basically written on a popular level. I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. That's not a scholarly title, so it's written on a popular level. But I recommend this. So that's 5. So I can get those for us for about $20. I will have a copy of next week's lesson for you that want one of those books. I'll just duplicate it. I feel that I can do that because I have bought you a book. and I'll have a copy of that for you because it may be beyond Sunday. And if I pay expedited shipping, it may even be more. So I don't want to do that. All right. So as we go along here, he gives the arguments for a theistic God. He said, since of the first cause, we call him God, he has to be spaceless. Since space was created, the cause must be spaceless. In other words, it must occur outside of the box. Timeless. Since time was created, the cause must be timeless. Immaterial. Since material matter was created, the cause must be immaterial. Powerful. Since the entire universe was created out of nothing, the cause must be extremely powerful. Intelligent. Since creation event was extremely fine-tuned and remains so to this day, the designer must be extremely intelligent. And all of this is found in the teacher's book, as I was saying, the answers to these particular questions. If you go online, if you go to YouTube, I don't know how to exactly navigate this, but what I do is I have gone to YouTube. I've looked up Frank Turek presentation apologetics and just done a search there. And what you'll do is you will come up with some of the seminars that he has done recently. This series, I think, was made in 2012, and it probably was put together earlier than that. So we're talking now 10 years down the road. He has augmented his material. He has given us more. I started to use these, or one or two of these, but there just wasn't enough information. This still gives you more information. But he gives specifics about how it was an intelligent design, about the how oxygen forms. A lot of the arguments that you can read about this talks about the intricacy of the human body. How our earth is only among a few earths that are just right for life to survive, and how God created that. And the whole idea is design demands a designer. An intricate watch presupposes someone made it because of its intricacy. It's not going to just happen by chance, which is basically the best science can do when it comes to how things came to be. He also has a section in here on the age of the universe, and I think he basically shares everything that he shared on the video, and then that basically got us through last week's lesson. Do you have any thoughts about that you want to? Mm-hmm.
Well, the surge showing that it's expanding, and then the radiation and all that showed that it began with an explosion, supposedly. And the scientists now, they say that it's not even, they realize it's not even.
Yeah, he quotes from several scientists that have made that admission. Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah, that's very good. Next week, we'll see the portion of the video that deals with divine design. That's called a teleological argument, that a design demands a designer. And that'll be next week. We appreciate your patience. Give me feedback on the class. Like I told you from the very beginning, I knew this being a video class, it may be a bit tedious for us, although I had people say, man, I really like the videos. There you go. So I just want to know how you're feeling about this, because we do, and invite other people to be a part of the class that you think may benefit from it. Thanks.
At now, is it objectively true that God exists? Okay? And that's going to get us into the next lesson. And that's going to be lesson 2, Does God Exist? And this is called In the Beginning. All right, so far, we've pointed out that yes, truth does exist. And now we're going to look at the question, does God exist? It is true out there that there's truth. So what we've done, if our reasoning is good to this point, the Bible could be true. Well, Richard Dawkins' book could be true. But what's false? Relativism and postmodernism. They're false. They don't even meet their own standard. Now we're going to see whether the Bible's right about God or Richard Dawkins is right about God. And when we talk about God, we've got to define our terms. What do we mean by God? We're going to talk about a theistic God. What's a theistic God? A theistic God is a God who's beyond the world, who created. All right, what we're going to do now is move on into lesson 3, and this